It's contrast and depth. Like, key to getting streets ahead in your cinematography is contrast and depth, and also intention. The shots that we think that are most pleasing, or at least I think that are most pleasing, the most cinematic images, have always these points in common. They're always contrasty images. They always have this depth to them, even though they are 2D frames, like two-dimensional stuff. We still can feel them in a three-dimensional space. And when I say contrast, I don't mean just contrast slider. I actually mean having dark and light areas in your image. I actually mean having different exposure levels to complement your frame, maybe having different colors. And when I say depth, I don't mean just a 90mm lens with a t1.0 aperture and then the whole background is completely bokehful. I actually mean framing. I actually mean set design. I actually mean the contrast that gives that depth, and as a bonus, also being actually intentional about it. It's not just like arbitrarily putting one light there, oh yeah, I'm just gonna have a shadow there because it looks cool, but actually thinking about something and saying, well, this fits within the story, then I'm actually going to do that. So yeah, I would say key to getting streets ahead in your cinematography is contrast, depth, and intention. There's a lot of ways of creating contrast within an image. My favorite way of doing this is with different exposure levels, which goes back to my childhood. It is my obsession. Like, I love this hard light thing because, you know, where I grew up, we used to live across a park, and there were always like a sundown or like golden hour, or even like in the middle of the day, the sun would come in with these hard shadows, but there were always like branches that gave me such a tactile feel, gave life such a tactile feel. And I crave to, you know, get that feeling back again with the stuff that I create. There's also color contrasts, you know, using different color combinations, using also different exposure levels and color combinations to create that beautiful contrast that we very much desire. Of course, when it hits the story. Just like contrast, there's a lot of ways of creating depth within an image. And the best part is when we create this contrast within our image, doesn't matter how, we also get this depth to our image, because it just takes a two-dimensional thing directly to three dimensions, or at least it gives the viewer the illusion that it's actually a three-dimensional something. Depth through contrast is actually with this video, which is kind of like my video, so shameless plug. But you can see how the curtain moves, and since curtain is like not just one thing, it has this like curves in it. So when you get this like bright spot on the wall, it's not just like one bright spot like equally bright. It has these like, some curves are a little less exposed, and some of it are more brighter and some of it are less bright. So that's the kind of like, since we're getting that contrast, it gives the image more depth. And there's also the importance of framing within this depth point, which is, you know, using the architecture of the room, architecture of the frame a little more to our advantage. Like, this could be like wandering deeply, not just wandering deeply, like everyone says, you know, shooting into the yellow of the room. Also salt and pepper with a contrast point. Or, you know, this could be, you know, leading lines, and, you know, there's a lot of ways to creating depth with actual architecture of the frame. There's also the importance of foreground, middle ground, and background elements. This is like very basic stuff that we all learn at the very start of our career, right? Like, you block the side of something with something and then you instantly get cinema. But it's kind of true in a way, because you're giving your viewer a sense of depth with this. You know, you're saying to the viewer, hey, like, look at this. There's a foreground element actually before my character. And then there's the character and the middle ground, and then there's the background. It naturally gives us this feeling of distance. One of my favorite ways of creating depth is actually frame-in-frame shots. It naturally leads your eye to the attention point of the frame. Like, this doesn't have to be in the middle of the frame. This doesn't have to, you know, be by the rule of like golden ratio, or like rule of thirds or anything. Like, this doesn't have to be a rule. It's just a feeling that you give to the viewer that just says, look, there's actually depth to this image. There's actually a reality to this image that you're seeing. And I love the fact that this is, I think, never, I'm not gonna say never, like, there are plenty of ways that it's like not subtle, but the stuff that I love are most in the most subtle way and the most like story fitting way. Now, I've shown a lot of screen grabs from Batman today, and I've talked a lot about Batman today, and this was not an arbitrary choice because it had a point to it. Because every scene that we have seen had these weird lens characteristics to it, and that is this point of like lens characteristics create actual depth and actual contrast to your image. Now, this is a very, very subjective point. Again, like we work in a visual medium. Everything that I say here is a subjective point. Like there's no one right answer, which is the greatest thing about art. I think that there is no right answer. You can't do anything right or wrong. Like you just have to do something. But again, I love anamorphic lenses because of the characteristics it gives, and those characteristics give always this depth to the image for me. The vignetting, the distortion, the pincushion, the barrel distortion, the focus fall off. It very gently leads your eye to the focus point of the image, which I think is the key. Like it doesn't push you. It's not in your face, and it's not like, hey, look at this. Like this is your focus point. I think it's very, very much subtler than that. Sometimes, yeah, the effects are not as subtle as the others, but I think this still does a very, very great job of giving this image, this 2D frame that you're seeing, a lot of depth, a lot of feeling to it. And you know, to this point, this is also why I love the wide angle adapter that I'm using until I get an anamorphic lens, because it just gives this barrel distortion. If we take a look at the focus fall off, like here, you can see my hands that are very much sharp, and if I were to go here, you can see how the focus falls off. And I think these are all parts that gives the image this extra oomph, the extra sauce that it needs, and just, you know, it just leads your eye to very subtly look at me. And I hope it's very subtly. I might, you know, sometimes not so subtle, sometimes it's very subtle, so who knows. And again, these points are all very, very subjective stuff, but I truly do think, like, it doesn't matter. If you like anamorphics, if you like spherical lenses, if you like soft lights, if you like hard light, or like actual depth in an image, it doesn't matter anything. But like, even though if it is subjective, I think it really is the key to getting streets ahead in your cinematography. And if you don't know what that means, you're streets behind.